all plays out. Sure, you have a question?
Did they put in any type of stipulation? Because it always used to be mean high tide line. Right. But as we know, our high tide lines change here a lot, and so beachfront property today might be gone tomorrow. So did they say when or what line they're going to use or what
just
time
wet.
of year?
Nope, they didn't. They just said wet, dry. Today, right.
It's a wet, dry situation.
Yeah, that's basically how they left it. I mean, it's very vague, very ambiguous. We'll see how it all, plays out. One of my...
Why did that even come up?
It had to do with Fort Walton Beach, which is in the Panhandle. They passed some kind of law. There was some kind of dispute there, and this was to resolve that dispute, and it was actually against the city. It was resolving it against the city. So I don't know how it's all going to play out as time goes on. My least favorite law that we passed this year was the bullying bill. And what that says is if you are in public schools and you're a child and you are a parent or the child, you can say that you were bullied in school, and then the taxpayers have to pay for you to go to a private school, to give you a voucher to go to a private school. And the thing that disturbs me the most, I mean, there's been a huge trend toward that anyway in the state, but the thing that disturbs me the most about this bill is that nothing happens to the bully. They get to stay in the school. There's no, you just say, I was bullied, and then you go to another school. So it's a crazy bill. If you want to address bullying, which is a big problem, then address bullying. But this is not the way to be doing it. So the big issue, which all of you unfortunately know about, was Parkland. And we were in session on the day that the shooting happened. We had a couple representatives from the area. They heard about it as it was going on. We stopped session, held a moment of silence before we even knew, many details at all. And those representatives got on a plane and flew home immediately. And there were 2 representatives and 1 senator, Kevin Rader, who represents Palm Beach County. He also represents Parkland. And they went to the Marriott Hotel where the families were, and they were there till 2 in the morning until there was a lot of, we had to make sure that they identified correctly. And they were there, and the families were not told till about 11 o'clock at night. They didn't start telling the families, but pretty much everybody who was there at that time, there was no good news for any of those people who were there. And they said it was the most heart-wrenching experience of their lives. And then we had the parents and the family, and we had parents come to Tallahassee, we had students come to Tallahassee. There was no question it was the most emotional session that I've ever been through. I've never cried as much when I was in Tallahassee. We would be sitting in committee meetings and the parents would be speaking to us. And it was very, very upsetting. And we only had 3 weeks left to go in session, and we had pretty much put in place most of our budget items by that point. This year we had an $88 billion budget. Which is a pretty healthy budget, but everything was pretty much in place, but we knew it was important that we find money to address the Parkland crisis. So everybody got to work, and so some projects got cut at that point in time, and priorities got shifted. The hurricane had been the priority up until then, and all of a sudden Parkland became the priority. We did do some things about, if you remember, we had the problem with the nursing home in Hollywood where people died. So we did address that, and there are new regulations for all nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Those regulations went into effect in June, and they are now required to have, I think it's like an area. They don't have to have the whole homes be air conditioned, but they have to have areas that are air conditioned enough to hold all the people who are there. And they have to report the information to the Agency for Healthcare. I'm going to follow up again, and there were some that hadn't reported as of June 1st, but we're going to make sure that everybody's prepared. So there is a provision in the bill about the hurricane that you can have an extension till January, because a lot of these people have to also go get make changes, build platforms, get code by code, things change. So we gave them a little extra time if they need to get some zoning changes. But even if they meet that, if they have that, they still have to have a plan for what they're going to do with their people if a hurricane comes this year. So back to Parkland. So we passed a really big bill, and I'm very proud. I was one of the people who did vote for the bill. There were people, it was a bipartisan bill. There were Democrats who wouldn't vote for the bill. There were Republicans who wouldn't vote for the bill. But we did get a bill passed. And what the bill said, basically, it had a lot of different parts of it. There's a part where we talk about hardening schools. There's money for them to harden schools. They're working on that here in Palm Beach County. Our school board has spent the summer trying to figure out, you know, a lot of our schools don't have single points of access, but they're trying to figure out how they can make sure that we have safety in our school areas. There's parts of the bill where we talk about mental health. I mean, it's really important, and that's, you know, it's something I've been advocating for my last 8 years for more money for mental health. As many of you know, Florida ranks among the bottom of the states in terms of mental health funding. So we did give more money for that, and that's something that the school board's going to have to do. There's a program called Mental Health First Aid, which is the equivalent of sort of teaching everybody CPR for mental health. I've taken the class. It's an 8-hour class, and they teach you how to address, you know, if someone's in crisis, what you're supposed to be doing, how you're supposed to talk to them. They give you some referral sources. So I know that that's a program there was some money put away for that, for teachers to have training in this mental health first aid so that they could see where there were children. And then the part of the bill that was the most controversial had to do with gun control. So what the bill does is it says you cannot buy a gun in the state of Florida until you are 21 years of age. There is a 3-day waiting period. And we are not, as of October 1, you cannot buy or possess a bump stock, which was what was used in Las Vegas, where they can automatically make a gun fire quicker. I have brought a lot of bills regarding guns in my years, and one of my bills is in the bill, which I was really happy about and really proud to see. And that's that the bill says, if you are a law enforcement officer and you think that somebody is a danger to themselves or to others, you can go to court and ask the court to take the guns away from that individual. And the law went into effect in March, and I know it's been used well over 30 times since then here in the state of Florida. It's been used very much in Broward County. They're obviously pretty proactive after what they went through, and I think I just read it was used in Delray recently. So what it is, it's a tool. It's another tool for individuals, for law enforcement, because before, if law enforcement was worried, there was nothing they can do. Also, as part of that law, you can put the individual on the list. They call it the NICS system, and they can be prohibited from buying guns. The way the law is written, it is for 1 year. At the end of 1 year, the police either have to go back and get a new law, or it expires and then the person can have access back to their guns. Also, during that 1 year, the individual has one opportunity to petition to ask for their guns back to them, you know, to say, I'm okay now, I've been treated or whatever. And the court has the opportunity at that point to determine if the individual should have their guns back. So that was pretty much the Parkland bill. We came up with $400 million for that bill. There's a lot of different parts to it. I mean, I think there's $25 million just to rebuild the building where it happened in Parkland. Obviously, no one's ever going back in that building. So they're gonna, after they finish the trial, because I think they need the evidence, but after that they'll tear it down and rebuild the building in that facility. So that's I am running really tight on time, so I hate, but I want to have opportunity to answer a couple questions. I'm going to conclude there and happy to answer any questions. Ruth?
Senator Berman, I'm all for protecting our people, and I greatly appreciate you doing that. I'm a little concerned, and I think it's a little conflicting, to raise the marriage age and yet have some surgical optional procedures able to be done with minors without parental permission. And I'm wondering why we're not enforcing parental permission being required so parents know they can guide their children and raise the age on that.
So I assume you're referring to abortion rights? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. In those situations, it is a court's decision, and very often in those situations, the parents might be involved. It might be a situation of incest where they don't feel comfortable going to the parents and talking to them. So the judge is making that decision, and I don't have a problem because the judge is actually making the decision in that case. Not the minors are not doing anything without judicial approval.
Okay. Thank you.
Your gun law, when the police officer goes and says that this particular person should not have a gun, is the court mandating that that person do something to be approved to get it back within that year's time? Are they being told they have to do something? Yeah.
I mean, no. Well, it's up to the judge. It is. They're in the law, the way it's written, it says the court can mandate that they have to get mental health treatment. So the court has the ability to do whatever they think is necessary, but it's not. It is in the law. In the law, it says the judge can do X, can order X, Y, and Z. I know mental health treatment is one of the things the judge can order. There's a few other things that the judge has discretion. I can't remember exactly, but I know mental health was one of them. So that is in there, and that's up to the judge when they make the order to if they want to add that to part of the order.
And when that year is up, they have to prove that they've had that mental
well, then I'm sure it would be, and I would think when that year's up. I mean, this is all a new law, so we haven't had a year yet. But I would hope that the police and law enforcement at that point, at the end of the year, really do a thorough investigation before they allow somebody to have access to their guns again. But we'll see how it all plays out. You know, they call it the red flag law. That's what it's called, and you might have read about it. It's been in the news quite a bit. We were not the first state to do it. I think there were Oregon, California. It actually was done in Connecticut before Sandy Hook. It was done in Connecticut before Sandy Hook. So there's about 8 states that have it, and I think there's since the incident happened, I think 7 other states have actually done variations. My bill, the way I drafted it, and I'm going to go back again next year, and some of the states do it this way, is they also allow family members to go to court and ask for the guns to be removed. The legislature wasn't willing to go that far this year, but I am going to ask them again because I often think family members are the people who see the problems and they know my son has a gun and he shouldn't have a gun.
And they're afraid.
And they are, and they don't want to necessarily report their children to law enforcement, which is the alternative, because now you have to do it through law enforcement, the way the law is written, and they don't want necessarily their kid to have a criminal record, but they would still like those guns removed. So I am going to go back this year and file the bill with the family members. I don't know what will happen.
So if a child has to give up their gun, that isn't giving them a criminal record just because they've got it?
Correct. Exactly. There's no criminal record. There's no criminal record. You're just right. Exactly. They haven't done anything, but they shouldn't have access to those firearms. That's a great question. So we did put $400 million in the budget, but it's not a lot because some of it goes to, like I said, $29 million to this building and $67 million to mental health, which we should be having guidance counselors in every single school also. That should be part of it along with the school officers. But it is a mandate that we have to have a school officer in every school, so the school board will have to figure out. It's unfortunate. We should, and you know, we give these unfunded mandates basically. And that's part of what we've done on that issue. But the school boards will have to come up with the money.
It just seems to me to be a terrible waste of public tax money to rebuild a school because something horrible has happened there. What precedent is there for this? I mean, they're
not rebuilding the whole school. They're just rebuilding the one building.
Just the building?
Yes, just the one building. It's not the whole school. I think Sandy Hook, they rebuilt that whole building at Sandy Hook. Yes, they did. Nobody would go back in that building. Yeah, there have been. I mean, I mean, I think it's.
Back down and rebuild it because something.
I think it's different with children too.
Yeah.
You know, that's a tougher issue.
I think people are more resilient than that.
Yeah. Well, they're not. No one wants. I heard the representatives and senators who went in that building were horrified. It's a real war scene in there. I mean, so I guess they could clean it up, but they're not going to. And they need to keep it until the trial too.
That needs to be done.
Mayor, my last question, then I have to get out of here. Uh-oh.
I just want you to be aware of, and I know you've gotten League of City Awards for representing us, these unfunded mandates, just like the school. Are you aware of that the school district is making us man our local schools with our police officers because they can't handle it?
I know they're working on all different solutions. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. I know, and it's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem.
It is.
That's something that I don't want to say it wasn't necessary, but you didn't look into the repercussions that came down the river.
Yeah, no, I mean, I could have told you we were going to not have enough money for police, for security. And I'm sorry that they pushed it off on the cities now. And then also, I don't know what's going to happen. There may be they may try and put something on the ballot because they're concerned about not having enough money for school security. So it'll be all the taxpayers too. And that's the way it unfortunately works. All right, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. And I'm sorry that we had to rush it today. And I promise you next time we will make sure it's not as rushed. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Sure. We would like to give you a Lantana fishing derby tip.
Cool. We're going to the opening in Boynton Beach tomorrow. They're having an accessible kayak launch area.
Oh.
So maybe
That would be an
I'll
appropriate
wear
place to wear it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except I don't know how happy they'll be. No.
That's okay.
Bye-bye.